Hello and welcome to another Stamp with Amy K YouTube live video. And I'm just out here refreshing things on my computer to make sure that I am live in the right place, which hopefully I am. And if you are joining live, sorry for the wiggling, trying to get everything set up here so that I'm somewhat centered. If you are joining live, I appreciate it very much. And thanks for hopping in and watching me make this card. So I have got a stamp set here that I have just used for the first time, and it's called Field Journal. And it is from the new Stampin' Up! Annual catalog that just went live a couple of, well, I guess it's been a couple weeks ago now, hasn't it? I feel like it's just been a few days ago, but it has been a little while. Hey, Karen, I'm glad that you're here today, so thanks so much for joining. So I am using, I made sort of a masculine card, I guess. I mean, I think it could go, you could use it as male or female card, but I'm going with masculine since this is one of those cards, you know, or masculine cards in general, I think most of us struggle a little bit with. So I usually try to pull out the good masculine sets from from the catalogs and use them so that you guys have some ideas for masculine cards as well. So all right, so I pulled out the field journal. Hey Karen, thanks for joining, and I'm glad you like the card. So it was kind of a fun one to put together. I just sort of, I don't even know. I started with the duck image first, and then after that, I just sort of built the card around that because I knew what I wanted to in the duck image. So, hey, Diane. It has been a little crazy today. Diane is one of my customers, and I actually have my retired Stampin' Up! Stuff on sale today, and I spent the morning putting retired stuff into boxes, and I'm selling that off. So it's been, like I said, been a little crazy today, but figured this would be a nice little break from that, doing a little stamping in the middle of everything. So, hey, Danette, I'm glad you're here as well. So, all right, so this is the stamp set. Like I said, it's called Field Journal, and it is one of the red rubber stamps, and stamp sets, I should say. And it's got some good, I mean, these could definitely be used for anybody who's into anything outdoors, but I especially like them because you can use them for masculine cards, which so many of our, so many times we have tons of flowers and, that sort of thing, and struggle a little to find good man stuff. So, so this is what we're using today. And like I said, I feel like it's a really good masculine stamp set. A couple other things that I used on it is I used the Tasteful Textile 3D embossing folder, which is probably hard to see because, again, I know it's kind of a dark background on it, and the light has to hit it just right for you to be able to see it. But I do have an embossed panel with this embossing folder for the background. That I also used the Stitched Shapes dies, the largest circle die, to cut out the image around the duck. Hey, Patricia. So I'm glad that you like that stamp set too, and I'm glad it's on your list. Yeah, it's definitely a good one. So then the last set that I used, the last die set, is the Field Tiles dial. Field Tiles dies. I wanted to call it dials, and I know I'll probably say that wrong 15 times during the video. But I used this die in particular to cut out the sentiment. I like that it's kind of a nice long, sort of one that can go around lots of different sentiments and things that we have. So this is actually bundled with a different stamp set in the annual catalog, but I just pulled out the dies and used it for my sentiment here. So the chipmunk is really cute, so I'm glad that but I'm ready to shoot the one in your yard. Yeah, they can kind of make a little bit of a mess. I know we have a few that do a little digging around here as well, so I understand what you mean about that. So, all right, so let's go ahead and get working. Well, yeah, I think we'll start with the card front. I guess I should put that together first. So again, I have, yeah, they are noisy too, but like I said, they at least the ones here dig little holes and kind of leave a mess for you. So I have pre-embossed. This is a piece of early espresso cardstock, and it's cut to 4 by 5 1/4, and I embossed it with a Tasteful Textile 3D embossing folder ahead of time. So that's kind of the background on the card. And then this is some of the In Good Taste Designer Series paper, and I have this cut to 2.5, I think, yep, 2.5 inches wide by 5 1/8 inches long. And I'm just going to adhere that here on the embossed panel that I've got, using a little bit of Stampin' Seal. All right. So hopefully you guys are enjoying your Friday. It's, like I said, it's been a little crazy busy here getting my retired items out to my customers that are ordering them. So it's been fun to, check out and see what you guys are all interested in, and glad that you're liking the deals that I've got posted for my retiring stuff. But I always offer that up to my customers first, and then anything that they aren't interested in, then I offer that up in general. But usually my customers kind of buy up most of my retiring stuff, which is awesome. I'm glad that you guys like the deals, and I'm glad that glad that it's moving out to a house or a place where somebody else can use it instead of me. So, all right. So next up, I have a little bit of the early espresso, and it is the faux suede trim that I'm going to adhere onto the card front here. And I've just put it in kind of a Z formation. Z formation, is that a word? And I'm going to snip it off here and use a little bit of Stampin' Seal. So, and just going to use that to adhere. Just going to run a couple little strips of it across my card front in a spot that I know will be hidden by the images and the little duck image later. So just going to go ahead and lay this across here, stick it down well. And again, I'm using the new Stampin' Seal adhesive, which if you haven't used it yet, give it a try. I think you'll like it. It's really super sticky, so much better than snail ever was. But like I said, I'm really liking it. It's taken me kind of a little minute to get used to using it because it's a little different motion that you have to use for using it, but it's been working great for me. So, all right, I'm going to set this aside, and I went ahead and pre-stamped the duck image because I wanted to make sure it was really dry in early espresso ink on crumb cake cardstock. And again, this is the image from the Field Journal stamp set, and we're going to do a little bit of coloring today. So, I've got out my blends, which again, if you aren't familiar with blends, they are an alcohol-based marker, and our regular Stampin' classic Stampin' Up is what classic Stampin' ink pads. I'm having a terrible time talking today, but the classic ink pads are water-based, so you can actually use the water-based ink with the blends, and they don't smear together. If you use two water-based inks, they'll smear. If you use two alcohol-based inks, they'll smear. But if you use the two different ones, then you're good to go, and you can color over the regular Stampin' Up ink with the blends, which I really like. So, because sometimes I don't always necessarily want everything stamped in black ink, so it's nice to have a little variety. So, all right, so I am coloring in the head of the duck, and I've got a light mossy meadow Stampin' Blends marker, and I think I accidentally colored his eye in, but well, he'll have a green eye. All right, next up I've got the light soft suede Stampin' Blends marker. And hey, Myrtle, I'm glad you're here today. So I'm going to go ahead and color in the front. Is it the chest, whatever you want to call it, on the duck? I'm sure there's probably some appropriate term for it. I'm not a duck or a bird person, so I don't know all the right terminology for it. But and then also going to color the wing here on the back. And I sort of looked up what one of these birds should look like as far as the coloring goes, but I'm not real exact on I didn't follow the image of the bird exactly. I sort of made it up and colored it the way I thought it looked best, not necessarily the right way. So if you're a bird person, I apologize up front that I'm coloring this all kinds of wrong. So, all right, so I'm going to color in the little feet with a dark pumpkin pie. I wanted to call it paper pumpkin. Sheesh. That's kind of a long way off from pumpkin pie. So, all right, so I'm coloring in the little feet on the duck, legs and feet. Hey, Lenny, I'm glad that you're here from Michigan as well. So hopefully you're enjoying your Friday. This is the marker I'm looking for. So I've got a light crumb cake marker here, which I know it's kind of it'll be hard to see it on here, but I wanted to have just a little bit of color over the, kind of the bottom part of the bird here. I didn't want to leave it completely uncolored, but once the marker dries, it actually turns pretty light colored, and you can barely see that it's got any ink on it. But that's okay. Like I said, I kind of wanted that look a little more, not quite as dark of a color on it. All right, then I've got the Mango Melody dark that I'm going to add to color in the little beak here on my bird. And next up, I actually grabbed the Stampin' Chalk marker, which is a marker that I have not used in a really long time. And I was happy to find that it actually still worked, because I had a moment of, I wonder if this is going to be dry, but it actually still worked. I've had it for several years. Just adding a little bit of white ink around the ring on the neck. I think that's what it's called. And then a little bit here, the back end of the bird I saw when I looked at it online was definitely almost a white color, but it wasn't quite white. So I actually had colored it with the Stampin' Blends marker and then put a little bit of the white ink over the top of it to sort of give it hopefully a more realistic look. But like I said, I know I colored it all wrong. So, all right. Then I have got the soft or Seaside Spray Light and Dark Stampin' Blends markers. Whoop, wrong end on that. I'm going to use the wide end on it. And the first color that I did was I just kind of went over everything with the light Stampin' Blends marker. And again, this is the Seaside Spray that I'm using. And then I'm going to come back in with the dark Seaside Spray and color in up here kind of closer to the bird where I feel like it would be a little bit more, a little darker shaded. Just adding a little bit of color in there. And the last thing that I'm going to do, so it looks like the mallards that you saw in the river. Okay, so I'm like I said, I was trying to make it look somewhat realistic, but I didn't. Some of it just, based on the colors that I was using and that I stamped it on crumb cake ink or crumb cake cardstock, it didn't turn out perfectly. So, but I figured it was fairly close, and hopefully you'd be able to identify it, even if you were a bird person, you wouldn't be too insulted by my artistic take, we'll call it, on the bird. So. All right, so I am going around here with the light crumb cake marker, and it's just going to add a very faint shadow. And then I'll show you one other trick that I do when I am using a marker to kind of outline like this. I will come back in a second with the color lifter and sort of lift up some of the color to make it a really faint shadow around the duck. So you can see already it's starting to dry a little bit lighter, but I'm going to come back in with the color lifter, and I generally tend to use the bullet end of the color lifter because I feel like I have a little bit more, I don't know, it's control probably isn't the right word, but I feel like it works better for me if I use the bullet end of it. It does have the regular brush end as well, but I feel like I can kind of really get in and color it better if I use the bullet end. So that's the one that I tend to use, particularly when I'm going to be doing this sort of thing where I'm going around and kind of trying to lighten the shadow a little bit. So. And again, I know on the crumb cake cardstock, you're looking at it initially and you're like, oh, it's going to look terrible because she's, it's way too dark. But I promise it dries much, much lighter than it looks when you initially put it on. So it's just the ink on the paper, and it'll dry lighter, a lot lighter. So, and when I go back and do this coloring around, I don't do like a really fantastic job in making it super, super neat. I just sort of come back and try to lighten it. That's my main goal, is to give it kind of a light shadow. So again, I'll let this sit for a second, and it's going to continue to lighten as it goes, and I'll take one more look at it before I adhere it to the card front just to make sure there aren't any really dark spots on it, which there might be because it's a little hard to tell, again, particularly on the darker cardstock, exactly how it's all going to end up looking and where I've missed spots and that sort of thing. So I'm going to give that just a second to dry. So. All right, and while that is drying, I'm going to work on the sentiment here. So I have got a little piece. Again, this is the In Good Taste Designer Series paper, and I have got the sentiment from the Field Journal stamp set, and I'm going to stamp it in early espresso ink. When I originally started this card, I had planned to put the sentiment on the darker wood, and I tried, and you couldn't really see it. So I switched it up. And I thought, well, I kind of like the different mixed look of the woods, so I figured that was good enough that, I was afraid it was too dark and, you wouldn't be able to see the sentiment at all. So I switched it up and put it on the lighter wood grain panel. So I'm going to step over here to the side. I've got my die from the Field Tiles dies, and I'm just going to put that right around my sentiment and cut it out really quickly. It is my favorite Designer Series paper, and don't let anybody tell you anything different. Everybody needs at least 1 or maybe 5 packs of this paper. And you can't lie, Karen. I know that you love it too. So at least I think you love it. I shouldn't say I know. All right, just going to run this through the die cutting machine. Okay, so it's not just me then, all right. Starting to wonder. I'd seen you use it several times, so I was assuming that you were liking it a lot. All right, let me get this up and off the... All right, so that is our die cut sentiment. I'm going to come back here and take a look. Again, I don't know how well it shows on the screen. I can hold it up here for a second and see if you can see it better. But there are a couple of spots like right here and right here on the bird where the ink didn't lighten quite as much as I want it to. So I'm going to go back in with my color lifter and just color in those areas. And there's actually a little spot back here on his tail feathers too. Just going to lighten those areas a little bit to get the shadow to look right on it, because I don't want any kind of dark globs like that. And when you're doing this on white cardstock, it's definitely easier to tell when you've colored enough. It's a little harder to tell it on the darker cardstocks. So, all right, so again, I'll set that aside and let it work on drying a little bit, although I should make sure that this is, yep, that'll work. And then I'm going to use Stampin' Seal to go ahead and adhere down my sentiment. A couple things that I do need to remind you of. The awesome deal on the starter kit is actually ending, I think it's the 30th, which I think is next week, Tuesday. So that is the last day that you can get the great deal on the starter kit, which is joining Stampin' Up. You pay $99 for your starter kit using Stampin' Dimensionals. And by the way, you can see I had a little stamping boo-boo on the back of here. So I just flipped it over and restamped it. So you pay $99 for your starter kits, and you get to pick $125 in Stampin' Up! Merchandise of your choice, so it's whatever you want. And then in addition to that, Stampin' Up! Is also, if you join during the month of June, is also adding in a free bundle of your choice from the new annual catalog. So if you are not a demonstrator and are interested in joining, definitely let me know. I'd be happy to talk with you about it and can tell you more about the benefits of being a demonstrator. You obviously get your 20% discount on anything that you purchase as a demonstrator, and you get to see the catalogs early and order on the pre-orders and all that sort of thing. So that's always definitely an exciting bonus as well. So, hey, Letitia, I'm glad you're here. So, all right, so let me go ahead and add in a couple little embellishments here. I have the metallic pearls, and these are the gold ones in particular that I'm using today. Hopefully, if I can get it flipped over here. And just kind of tucked a few of those around. I thought it needed a little bit of something. I don't want to call it bling because this is supposed to be kind of a masculine card, but a little something shiny for the card. I thought it was too plain without it, so I just added a couple of the little, oops, and then I've got a pearl stuck to my finger, goodness. All right, a couple of the little metallic pearls to finish off the card front. And then my original card, I have it set as a 4 1/4 by 11 inch card base, scored at 5.5. And again, it's early espresso cardstock. And I have it opening more of the kind of portrait mode. The one that we're doing here today is actually more of a book fold card. And it's cut to 5.5 by 8.5 and scored at 4 1/4. So again, you can cut your card base however you prefer to work with it. So I prefer, I don't know, like I said, I tend to prefer the more portrait cards, but sometimes when the cardstock, this is what I have cut, then this is what I use. So it just sort of depends for me on what I'm doing and, you know, what I have cut for cardstock. So, all right, using a couple little Stampin' Dimensionals here to adhere this, hopefully, if I can get the papers off, adhere this to the card front. While I'm working on that too, I also want to remind you that Stampin' Up! Is offering a really great deal if you are not interested in joining, but love the new catalog as much as, well, we all do. I do. They are also offering a great deal if you order or have a party, host a party where you have $250 or more in merchandise. You get free $25 in extra Stampin' Rewards, basically host cash, for either hosts or people who put in larger orders of $250. So if that is something you're interested in, definitely let me know and I can talk with you more about that too. All right, so I adhered on while I was chattering a little piece of the leftover of the In Good Taste Designer Series paper to a piece of crumb cake cardstock. And I am using a little Stampin' Seal to, to adhere it down. There we go. My driving is a little lacking today. All right, and we're going to adhere that right to the inside of the card base. And there we go. All right, so the card, I just need to do a little quick crease here on it with the bone folder, and we will be done with the card. So, all right, so that is my card for today. Here's my one that I prepped ahead of time. This is the one we made on screen today, so hopefully you like the card. Hopefully it gives you a few ideas for that fantastic stamp set. Again, some good masculine cards can, well, good any kind of cards. Anybody who likes the outdoors would love this stamp set. So I will be posting all the details on my blog tomorrow with all the cardstock cuts and everything, so no need to worry about that if you weren't able to keep up, because I know I talk a million miles an hour, and I probably said the wrong measurements anyway, but I'll be posting the correct ones out on my blog tomorrow, and I will definitely link it up in the comment section underneath this video as soon as the blog post goes live. So thank you very much for joining me today. I will plan to be out on my Facebook page live on Tuesday around 2 o'clock Eastern time, and back here on YouTube live again around 2 o'clock Eastern time. Hey, Sue, I'm glad you're here. Thanks for hopping in to the end, and glad you like my card. So, and yay, I see a couple of you are planning to order the stamp set. It's a good one. So definitely do it. You'll like it. All right, so that is all I have for you today. Again, I appreciate you being here and spending part of your Friday hanging out and stamping with me, and have a great weekend, and I will chat with you all soon.